Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Roll for Context. Me and my friend Mason here, we're going to be going over new tabletop RPG systems in case you're trying to branch out. Most of my experiences with Dungeons and Dragons. What about you?
Hey everybody. Well, played a lot of D&D as well myself. That's most of what I've played, but I have a love of just reading RPG books. Haven't had much chance to really play them, but I've got a lot in my noggin there for just going through that stuff. So today I think we're going over Mork Borg, right?
Yeah, I know nothing about it. Why don't you tell me a little bit, your understanding of this game?
Yeah, I can go over it. First of all, very quick read, not very thick there. There's some PDF materials out there too, not the whole book, but you can get some free stuff. There's a reference if you want. Just a brief rundown of like the Mork Borg pitch meeting. Mork Borg is a rules light RPG. I mean that in the sense that, there's, again, as I said, not a very thick book. There's a lot of that stuff is there to get the game running quick and making characters quick. Set in this age of apocalypse, your characters live in this shitty world. Any day can be their last, and it very well could be because you're rolling for apocalyptic events as you play. You get to pick the rate at which that apocalyptic event could happen. So you can choose from a D2, a coin, a D4, D6, D20, D100, and if you hit a 1, an apocalyptic event is going to happen, and then you roll on the apocalypse table, and
this
that
game
event
is
now...
kind of good, like if you're just trying to get something done quick, or do you think you can still do longer campaigns in it?
So you could do longer campaigns. I'm just going to go to the page, because why the hell not, right? So yeah, it goes anywhere from D2 to D100. So it could be a very quick campaign. You do a D2, so essentially I should step back a bit. You have to roll 7 apocalypse for the world to end. The 7th one will always be the end of the world. If you're using a D2, a coin, you have a 50% chance every time you roll to get an apocalyptic event. But if you use a D100, you can have a long game if you really want to. Personally, to me, I think a D6 or a D10 looks like the most fun. Personally, reading this book, I get the impression that you want that feeling of dread on you. The D100, it just seems like that isn't Mork Borg.
Yeah, it just kind of takes you away from all of it.
Yeah. I guess to go back into that pitch meeting a little bit, the whole point of this game is there's that feeling that any day could be your last, right? There's that feeling of dread on there. Your characters aren't heroes; they're outcasts living in this shitty world. You also should have the feeling that your character could die at any point. Your character is going to die, no matter what you do. So if you do die in the game, whatever, roll a new character. Who cares?
Yeah, and I think because I was looking over the rules just a little bit, and to my understanding, a lot of things in this game are mostly based around a DC check of 12. Where it's if you want to attack something, you're rolling for that. If you're getting attacked, you're rolling a defense die, right?
100%. Yeah, it's
Yeah, there's just 4 stats: agility, presence, strength, and tough. It is a very simple system.
Yeah, as you said, everything is a 12. But armor and various monster stats can change that, right? Armor really is about reducing the damage you take, not about reducing the amount of chance you get hit. In fact, if you're wearing heavy armor, the chance of your defense roll goes up of what you have to hit. So you only really want to wear armor if you have really bad agility and are probably never going to make your defense rolls.
As well as this game also has a couple of things where if you want to cast spells and spells that cast through skulls, you need to not be wearing armor unless you're a certain class that can then wear, I think, medium armor, right?
Yeah, there are restrictions there that if you are casting spells, you shouldn't be using this. But do we want to talk about spells? Because that's a really good segue into what is a very interesting thing.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Also, if you want, please hold up that book, show spit of the art, because it looks like Mork Borg has a very, very specific, a very unique art style as well that goes along with the book.
Yeah, I'm going to find a good page here that I specifically want. I'm going to come back to this later, but I really do like this picture. This is one of the classes, the Gutterborn Scum, if that doesn't give you enough of an idea of how this game works. But again, you look at some of this artwork, it's very metal.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I want to go. But again, this is the guy you're playing, right? Does that look like a hero?
Yeah, that's the guy saving the world, stopping the apocalypse.
Yeah. Oh no, the apocalypse ain't gonna stop. Nothing can stop the apocalypse. I think there's a thing here about pleasing the 2-headed basilisk that has foretold the apocalypse, but I don't know if you can actually end it. I mean, here's the other thing I want to bring up, and we'll go into spells in a second here too. I feel like it's very homebrewable. There's a very house rule-y feel to this. The rules are very quick. Here's just kind of how it works. but it feels like there's a lot of room for, oh, well, this is how I run my whole game. So to that point, if you want to put in a thing where it's like, oh, there is this chart of things that you can do to appease the two-headed basilisk, like give it a sword. One of them is give it a sword that has killed taken exactly 10 lives. Maybe that's something that can prevent the apocalypse, like delay the apocalypse, if that's something you want to do.
And this appeasement thing, is that actually like something in the game, or is that
it's like yes and no. It's not like a mechanic. Let me just get to that page. I think it's more, if anything, like a flavor thing. Like if you were playing like here we go, a character that like cared more, like, but like this is basically the most important most important religion in this world worships the basilisk, one of the basilisk's heads that foretold the apocalypse. It has the basilisk demands. It doesn't really tell you what these things are even for. It's just a page that says the basilisk demands. Roll a d20, and then there's a list of 20 things. I'll just read some of the ones I like. A sword that is killed exactly 12 times. A child born with a third eye. A body drowned in Lake Onda. A body mutilated by those who loved it in life. Random things that it just says the basilisk demands. It does not say that it gives you anything. It does not say that it punishes you for not doing these things. It is just a page that tells you what the basilisk wants.
That's it, eh?
Yeah, so that's the idea, is I guess you can use that how you want. Do you want to use that as a way to, as a plot hook for your characters, for your players, to get them out there and going and just saying, hey, you're in this capital city where the religion is. This is what the basilisk wants. Get out there. I mean, there's 100 different ways you can start it.
Yeah, with most TTRPGs. But this one's just nice because, doesn't really give you context for it, but it does, it seems like, even we're going to go into the character creation from this, but there's a lot of things where you can roll for, like, ideas and inspirations and stuff like that within that book.
Yeah.
Even though there isn't a lot for it, and it's a little light on monsters and stuff like that, I think you are correct when you say it encourages you to homebrew. Or, to think outside the box and, have something fun for your character goals, like basilisk demands, what you have on you, things like that.
Yeah, everything is designed also just to roll for it. And I think we'll get into that when we get to character creation. But a lot of it is designed to be random. And like we were talking about combat, as you said, everything is a 12. You get various weapons that, can increase damage, decrease damage. You have armor. Armor can change damage you take, but increase the rate at which you'll be hit. Same thing with monsters. They can have armor that reduces the damage they take. To that point, actually, this is a thing that I think it took a bit of reading to fully understand about the 12 base rolls, the defense, ranged, and melee. I said this before, monsters don't roll. When a monster attacks you, you just roll defense. If you pass your defense, great, you don't get hit. But if you don't pass your defense, you do get hit. So it's simple. It reduces rolling time. You don't have to have your DM being like, 1 sec, let me just figure this all out. Initiative, another interesting thing to bring up there. It's group initiative. Either your entire team goes first or the enemy goes first. But then it also has a different thing separately. If you want to do single character initiative, here's how you do it. Because once you do the group initiative, the idea is you choose who's going to go first in your group. They give you a system, again, just giving you options on how you want to roll that initiative within the group. Or
yeah, and the other thing they have is like morale checks and stuff like that, where it's like if you're fighting these creatures, so like with the group initiative, you don't need to kill everything, but if you kill their leader, they need to make a morale check, and then maybe the fight ends there, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like the combat is, I say, is snappy. Like no one's health is ridiculously high. Fighting is quick to do, and then there's the morale, right? So the way morale checks work, an enemy will roll them when either the leader is killed, half the group is eliminated, single enemy has only 1/3 of its HP left. Any of these things happen, you then roll a d6, and on 1 through 3 they flee, 4 through 6 they surrender. There's a bit of variation on how those morale checks can go, and depending on the enemy type, you might prefer one than the other. Just to touch on one, the goblin is really interesting in this, is that they're not a separate creature, race, whatever. They're basically an infection. Simply being attacked by a goblin, they don't have to hate you. Just their malice to hurt you is enough. Being attacked by a goblin makes it that within, I think it's some d6 days, you will become a goblin if you do not kill it. within a certain amount of days. And the way it describes it is, first in a goblin, when someone becomes a goblin, the human is still alive inside, watching through the eyes that are no longer theirs. So it's kind of like a host takes over. You're still in there, forced to watch as you do cruel and hateful things to those around you.
That's pretty
which is pretty metal. And a lot of these enemies in here have these like these additional things where it's like they don't just attack and hit. They all have these additional stuff. Trolls say that if they flee, they will come find you again. And by being hurt, they grow bigger. So if you let them flee and they come back, they're gonna be bigger and stronger. So you better try and kill it when you get the chance. And that's the same thing with the goblin. If it flees instead of surrendering, you better make sure you kill it, or else you gotta start rolling to become a goblin.
You know, I think is also like, you know, we've mentioned it a couple of times, it is a very small book. There isn't a lot of things in it, but what it does have is a lot of unique things. Even these monsters, for instance, sound like something that are just funner to interact with than just a punching bag, right?
Exactly. It gives a characterization, like also like a fear there. Like, I don't want to become a goblin. Yeah, I'll just read the quote might as well that I was kind of talking about. All goblins carry a curse. Once like you, they are now trapped in the prison of their crazed goblin flesh. Only their eyes reveal the truth. A ruined mind watching its body prison perform terrible deeds. Then it goes into the mechanics of rolling. I think it's D6 days, but you're before you become a goblin. So it'd be D1, and then you really better hunt that goblin down.
Yeah, and that's another thing with Mork Borg. They do not pull their punches.
They do not pull their punches. And that's the cool thing about this, is you could just run a game. Like, one, it sounds easy to start a game. As you said, a lot of things in there to get a game started easily, to just randomly generate things. You're creating a character. Very easy. You know, the whole idea is if you're going to be dying easy, at least make setup easy, right?
Yeah.
I know we mentioned it before. I think we should just a little bit go back to spells, because that's part of the combat. We haven't really touched on that. There are 2 types of spell scrolls.
I think it's Unholy and Blessed.
When you roll, if you fail to succeed on a roll with a spell scroll, because you have to hit the DC or
you need to make a presence check to cast a spell.
A presence check. If you fail the presence check, you then become... The spell doesn't happen, and you become wounded or dazed. And then once that happens, the next failure will become an automatic fumble. Fumble being their word for like a rolling a nat 1. And if you roll a nat 1 on a spell, oh boy, you get a nice another list of things that you can roll and have bad things happen.
I believe the quote in the book is that if you try to cast another spell while dazed, you will have a fumble and it will be as bad as possible. And I believe the other thing that's kind of worth mentioning that makes this game a little bit unique is like when you level, you don't actually really get a lot of stuff with your class, and if anything, your stat increases. I believe you actually need to roll for it, and you need to roll above what you currently have. So if you want to increase your HP, if you have 6 and you roll a 7, you gain 1. You roll under that 6, then you don't gain any health. Same with any other stat, right? And there's like a maximum.
There's one thing there that you forgot to mention, though, is that for health, you're right. You don't get health if you don't go over. But for stats, if you roll below your ability check, you will lose a point. That's also kind of the point of creating a character is, if you have to create a new character, how behind can they really be? You're going to average around 3, I guess is the idea, right? That's going to be your average roll.
But I think the main thing that this kind of encourages is, like you said, like, well, new character, how far behind can you be? Because if you have a weaker character, odds are you're going to get stronger. If you have a stronger character, odds are you're going to get weaker, right? So it's kind of, the longer you play, you're going to eventually, tend towards an average of everyone else, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to follow an average. The only difference is if you play classless. I think if you play classless, your ceiling of what your stats can be are a bit higher. And I think there's a little bit more wiggle room. You don't have to play a class. I think that's something we haven't really touched on here. You can choose to play without a class.
Yeah, right. That is actually probably a good time to jump into it. Is like the classes game are a bit unique. One of the other things, like you said, you can be classless, and the way they balance that is like you have something called omens, which works as like a reroll, right, or like a lucky die where you can just roll something.
Yeah, there are various omens, right? Reroll is like the most common one, but there are various things that can happen with an omen. Here you go. So some of the options they give you can either deal maximum damage with one attack, reroll a dice or someone else's, neutralize a crit or fumble.
What about the classes then? So like you can do classes and you have one extra omen. What are the classes like? I know you showed
Utterborn Scum.
Yes, that one. That's the one.
Yeah, let's get into the classes. Let's go over this first one here. The Fanged Deserter. So this is, I guess, essentially your warrior. Cut sharp, jagged teeth. Get a bite attack that is on par with In this game, you can roll for like companions. So your bite attack is on par with an attack dog, so keep that in mind. You begin with D2 omens. You got a bit better toughness than others. And then you get a roll for 6 different starting skills. And that's kind of what separates a lot of these classes from each other, and why you would choose a class over going classless, is some of these skills can be pretty like amazing, to be honest. Again, going to read a couple examples. For the Fanged Deserter, one of my favorites is Wizard Teeth. You have 4 weird teeth that rattle within a blackened pouch. Before battle, roll a d6 for each one. For every 6 you roll, one of your attacks deals maximum damage.
Pretty
Not
good.
bad. Or another one, Shoe of Death's Horse. I'm just going to shorten it. It's a boomerang that you can throw and will always come back to you. It has a 1 in 6 chance of immediately caving in a small to medium-sized creature skull. So that's pretty good. That's not bad. Anything else you want to touch on Fanged Deserter, or should we head to the next class?
I think you summed it up pretty well with basically a warrior with teeth.
Yeah. So here's your basically a thief, and one of my personal favorites reading through this book that I showed before, the Gutterborn Scum. There's each one of these classes has like a D6 roll you can do to kind of like get some flavor, and almost all of the Gutterborn Scums one are just like, yeah, no one wants you. And all their skills kind of go into that too. So for them, I'll just go over skill stats a little bit. Again, D2 omens. You have less strength but higher agility. Here's my favorite quote, I think, in the book. The D6 for the 6 roll for the Gutterborn Scum's skills. Dodging death. You are so unpleasant, vile, irrelevant, and disgusting that even death would rather avoid you if it can. On death, if there is even the slightest possibility that you survived, there is a 50% chance that you did. If successful, after 10 rounds, you pop back up with D4 health, and an unlikely explanation of how you survived. That's pretty good. In a game that's trying to kill you, you're going to have a lot of scars if you play this guy. And a way I would like to homebrew that is like, okay, if you survive one of those, you have to roll on the... there's another table. We'll probably get to that later. Of injuries you can come
we jump
out
to
with
that
from
after
near-death
classes.
experience. Yeah, we'll do that after. But I think if I was homebrewing it, I'd be like, yeah, if you're going to take that ability, then you should have to roll an injury. The injuries don't really affect how the character plays, by the way. It's more aesthetics. And then one more thing I want to mention. Anytime the Gutterborn Scum gets better, you can re-roll their specialty, like their ability, if you wish. So if you don't like the one you start with, you want to give it another go, well then next level up, here you go. Alright, next one here is the Esoteric Hermit. So, this one, you're living in a cave. Presence is better. Your strength is worse. I think this is one of our kind of more magic-y guys. You kind of come from like a ritual background. You get D4 omens, so more omens. Yeah, I would almost put this in like the druid territory. I'll read a couple of their abilities though. A Book of Boiling Blood. You may open a book and read from this book once a day. Your enemy must make a DR12 test to prevent this. If they fail, D2 Berserker Slayers, see page 60, appear from the depths of the forgotten dimension of blood. Roll a D6. On a 1 through 4, these creatures fight alongside you. On a 5 through 6, they turn on you, attempting to kill you and destroy the book. After the battle, they return to their imprisonment. So, it's a risk, that book. It's like, oh.
Yeah, it could be really good, but at the same time...
You could also lose the book altogether.
I think the weirdest thing in that to me is the fact that the 5 to 6 are the bad numbers.
Yeah, they kind of play around with like what's a good number or what's a bad number a lot in this book. Sometimes 1's bad, sometimes 6 is bad. They just kind of do it how they feel, which I guess is kind of nice. It's bad in an inconsistent way in the sense that it's like there isn't this good number and bad number, but it's also in a way where it's like don't get comfortable, I guess. And then there's another ability here where you can get a hawk as a weapon. Yeah, and they I feel like they can kind of go into like that spell but not fully spell area. Next one we have Wretched Royalty.
Sounds like a bit of a jump compared to the Gutterborn Scum, but go on.
Yeah, I guess the flavor for this one is you're a rich kid with lots of stuff who is no longer living the illustrious lifestyle. Maybe the apocalypse fucked you over. Maybe you've been disowned. You still have a lot of your rich stuff, but I think you kind of put this best in like your brief read where you just said you don't get as much cool like abilities, but you get a lot of stuff. Yeah, you get 2 specialties instead of 1. Some of these skills is like a Blade of Your Ancestors, which does more damage, but has a high chance of choosing to attack one of your companions instead.
It's like a cursed weapon.
Yeah. And then there's things just like you can either have a squire or a court jester that follows you around, which is kind of fun. I don't know if there's anything you want to touch on there. 2D
I
omen.
think you're doing a pretty good job. You want to touch on something? I just gotta quickly grab something for someone. I'll be 1 second.
Welcome to the Mason Hour, where it is just me all day, all hour, all by myself. Oh wait, the Mason Hour is over.
Sorry, just got back. We're talking about the heretical priest, right?
Yes, so here goes the next class, the heretical priest. Yeah. This is probably your gonna be one of your true casters.
Sure.
You are hunted by the two-headed basilisks of the one true faith. This heretic can be found raving in ruins, trapezing endlessly down dusty roads, and desecrating cathedrals by night. You're not good in a different way, but like really, who's worshipping the basilisk that told you the world is gonna end? Why is that the major religion? I think this heretic has a point. You get D4 omens. So lots of omens. You have good presence, but not great strength. You get decent weapon choice, D8 roll in the weapon table. And you may use powers while wearing medium armor. Just ability. Most, I think, as you said, have to have no armor, but you can do medium if you're the heretic priest. You have a shepherd's crook that can warp through reality, hook through other worlds. And then you have a heretical blasphemous Bible, which has various results that can like either help you or if you get a bad roll, give you hallucinations and make things go bad. One of them I like is if you one of the bad results. The priest is plagued by demonic hallucinations. The DM may invent D3 things that only the priest can see and describes them to the player as if they are true. The effect ends with the sunrise.
Yeah, it lasts for quite a while too.
Yeah, for the whole day, right? So
not a good way to start the day.
Yeah, maybe read from the book at the end of the day, you know, because it says sunrise, not a whole day. Yeah, so I think that's your true caster there. Let's go to our next one, the occult herb master. Maybe this is more your druid than the other one. Occult herb master, born in the mushroom, raised in the glade, watched by the eye of the moon. They have two D2 omens, so about the same as most of the classes. It's plus D6 toughness, but you get a bonus toughness roll over other classes, so you're really strong. You get bark skin. But you do come with a portable laboratory that you can use to make potions and stuff. And all your skills are centered around potions. I think your skill is just that you do potions, and you roll daily when you want to brew a potion. So you can a potion that climbs walls, a potion that makes you vomit for D4 hours, healing, so on and so forth. But yeah, I think that is all the classes.
Alright, well, there's one question I do have to ask then, is what is a D66? That's been mentioned.
I knew you were going to ask this because it's kind of confusing. So, you're talking about the Apocalypse roll table, right?
Yes.
On the Apocalypse table, it says, roll a D66. This is confusing because you'll go, what the hell is a D66? Actually, what it's asking you to do is roll a D6 and then roll another D6. Because the Apocalypse thing is separated into these, I'm going to try and put it up close there, but into like little psalms. So it says Psalm 1, Psalm 2, Psalm 3, Psalm 4, Psalm 5, Psalm 6.
And that's like the lore of the world, right?
Yeah, basically there's sections, right? And then in each section, there are 6 different lines. So section 1, you have line 1 is the city shall be made hollow of all those who rest in hollowness they shall not be seen. While if you roll a 1 and then a 6, you'd get and blood cough shall spread like fire across the wastelands of the drought.
And that's where the apocalypse comes from then, eh?
Yes, yeah. So you roll a d6 that tells you which section, and then you roll that second d6 and that tells you which line to read.
That's kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah. So it's not a d66 because not even 66 things can happen because it's 6 times 6, 36. 36 things can happen.
30.
So an actual d6, if that existed, would not work.
I really like that actually. I think that makes the apocalypse thing, because like before when I was looking through it, I'm like, I can't find the apocalypse.
Yes.
But now it makes sense, right? Because I was like
different...
expecting like a 66-sided die that maybe the book came with. I don't see this chart though, but now that right there, I think that's one of the coolest things. Is like they have, what are they called? Poems?
Psalms, like PSALM, because it's like supposed to be like a Bible, right?
Yeah, it's like an actual voice. You're interpreting that. And that is the actual apocalypse.
Well, and that's the thing, too, is some of these, I think, are kind of straightforward in what the apocalypse is. For example, and Leviathan shall come among you, children winter-born and fated to fall before snow. both shall it take. That's kind of straightforward. Children born in winter are going to be killed by this Leviathan. You can interpret that however you want. But then there's some that are a bit vague, and you can interpret this as a DM however you want. The city shall be, I read this one before, the city shall be made hollow. Of those who rest in hollowness, they shall not be seen. What the fuck does that mean? I would interpret as in one of the major cities gone. Everyone's just disappeared. No one knows what happened. That's my interpretation, and that's how I would run it in the game. But you could interpret it completely different. Maybe there's a crater now where that city is. Maybe Hollow is, in spirit, everyone becomes a zombie. No soul there anymore, right? There's so many different ways you could pull it the way you want. But yeah.
It leaves a lot to the imagination, and therefore, as creative as you can be can really change a lot.
Yeah, so to that point, 36 different apocalypse events. No game you're going to run is going to have the same apocalypse, is the way I see it. Even if you somehow roll all the same apocalypse events in the same order, the DM is going to flavor it differently depending on who is running your game, right?
Why don't we go ahead? I'll try to sum it up, and then if I don't do a good enough job, you can try to sum it up and kind of, see how this turns out, see if my understanding of this is about accurate. So, Mork Borg is a game that's meant to be played relatively quickly. It's a very punishing game. It has like 6 or so different classes in it, and none of them are really heroes. Start of each day, you're rolling a 6d6, which is actually just 2d6s. That'll tell you, the apocalypse. After you get 7 of these, the world ends. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, it's supposed to be a really quick game, right? And that's relatively brutal. I don't think I did a very good job summing that up.
That wasn't bad, actually. I mean, if you want, I can take a shot at it, but I think that was good. So, in summary, Mork Borg is a punishing, brutal game set in an apocalyptic, dark, terrible world. Your characters can die, they will die. Combat is fast, snappy, character creation is fast, snappy. It's all about hitting this idea of life is short. You roll a dice every morning, decide what apocalyptic event happens, whether it happens, and then you roll for what event happens. There's a lot of cool things that can happen. The theme is very metal. It is a little tailored towards someone who's played an RPG before. If you read the book, it's not going to give you, it doesn't have the gloves on. It goes straight into it. These are the straight rules. You know how to RP. What do you think of that?
I think that's pretty good. Well, let's just talk a little bit about injury and death, since we've talked about, how easy it is to go down and the injuries and stuff like that. So what's involved when you are reduced, 0 hit points? What happens?
So that's the interesting thing about Mork Borg. And this is, I want to touch on something I think I would homebrew a little. In this game, it depends whether you drop to 0 or below 0. Because in D&D, if you drop below 0, it just ends up being 0 unless it's, double your hit points or something like that, or equals to your hit points underneath.
I think that's in 3rd, but in 5th, it's just, you hit 0, you go beyond 0, you had 0.
Are you not instantly killed if you hit under a certain threshold or something like that?
There's rules for it at the back of the DMG that you can or can't include, but it's all just variant rules.
Okay, well, so what I'll touch on here is that if you go below 0, you just straight up dead. Like, if you have 5 health and you get hit for 6 damage, you're dead.
Unless you're gutterborn, then,
Unless you're gutterborn and you have that skill, in which case you get to live. If you hit exactly 0, you become broken, not dead. And then you roll a d4, which determines what happens to you. On a 1, you become unconscious for d4 rounds, waking up with d4 health. On a 2, roll a d6. 1 through 5, you have a broken or severed limb. Roll a 6, lose an eye. Can act for d4 rounds and then become active with d4 HP. Roll a 3 on that initial d4 check. Hemorrhage. Death in d2 hours, unless treated. All tests are d16 for the first hour, d18 for the last hour. You roll a 4 when you're broken, you just straight up die. So even if you manage to get that 0. So this is where I said I would like to homebrew it maybe a little bit. Is I like the broken mechanic a little bit. I like the idea of like you having this character, missing eye, maybe like their hand is chopped off, I don't know. So maybe you do play it a bit differently, that if you fall below 0 HP within a certain threshold, let's say 5 or something, then you roll against the broken table instead. It's just one way to play it. You wouldn't have to play it this way. But that's something I'd like to think about, right? If you really played by exactly as the book is written, there is a quote in here, when you roll an apocalypse, the final apocalypse, the game and your lives end here. Burn the book. So if you really played exactly rules written, you'd have to burn the book when the game's over. So I'm not sure how I would run that death personally. I think I would like to play with it and see, really how often are people dying? Is it funner to allow people to be broken if they're dead within a certain threshold? What is that right threshold? I don't know. What do you think, Connor?
I think that's definitely something you'd have to play the game and like figure out, because again, like to me, everything in this game, the system, the level up, all of that, this sounds like something that would be very fun to play quickly, fast and loose with the rules, get in, get out, and just, have a blast, making characters fast. Not a lot of, choices here or there, level up system as well, not super in depth. So I think like you could do that. But at the same time, I think a bunch of the fun of what this is balanced towards is dying and making someone new and just throwing it out there, right? But again, I haven't played, so
I mean, neither have I, right? So I guess we'll find out. Yeah, that is kind of the status, the
overarching framework.
Overarching framework. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, the mission statement. That's the word. That's the mission statement of this book, right?
I definitely think we should at some point get together, try playing this with a couple of friends, and maybe get back to this again, see if maybe our opinions have changed, and what it is that we learned along the way.
Yeah, I love that idea. Like, there's so much we could find out from playing this and seeing how it actually works, using some of the roles. I think it's an interesting conversation. I think I would like to hear is, how does it actually play now that you do it? Rules are one thing, experience is another.
Well, I think with that in mind, I'll probably wrap this one up here, do that one shot, and then definitely get back to this at some point. But thank you guys for joining us, and I hope you did enjoy this. And maybe you learned something, or maybe you also want to try Mork Borg, in which case you can do that now. Book costs about what?
$40.
And besides that, you can also get the PDF, quick rules, and a character sheet online for free from their website.
If you're interested in Mork Borg and you want to dive head first, I would say pick up this book, give it a read. Anything to support content creators out there.